Hey friends, so excited that you guys are here and really want to take this opportunity to be able to introduce you to some of my best friends. Specifically, not just because they're my best friends and they're awesome people, but because I think they have a lot to be able to share, specifically about how God's allowed them to walk through life in general, both through some dark valleys and also some difficult times that I know is not uh, necessarily common, or at least we don't think it's common. But 1 in 4 women actually struggle with either losing a child due to miscarriage, and instead of just pretending it doesn't happen and wishing it never does, I would rather open up the conversation and be able to talk with people who have unfortunately had to walk through the valley in that path so that we can actually better understand how we can actually lovingly come alongside people as friends and walk beside them and learn to cry with people and celebrate them with them when there's times to celebrate. So without further ado, here are my friends, Jenn and Brandon Howie, who are so gracious to come and share their life story. They've been sharing their life with me and my wife. We're really good friends and hang out a lot. But I would love for you, Jenn and Brandon, just to kind of talk a little bit about your kids, specifically the ones who we didn't have a lot of time to meet with and be with here on Earth.
Okay, so we lost our first daughter, Emery, over 6 years ago now. She was a healthy baby until she was born. She had meconium. She breathed it in and swallowed it in the womb, and which caused her to stop breathing. So she spent 3 days in NICU. And we were first time parents. We didn't know anything. We didn't even think that people lost babies. Like this was never even a thought in our minds. Um, so it was just all a shock when it all happened. And then on the third day, when basically her organs were failing her because she had lack of oxygen because of all that at birth, um, her body did not survive the damage. And the hardest moment was, and most precious at the same time, was getting to hold her for the first and last time, as she took her last breath in NICU. And she was only 3 days old.
So, what would you say as far as like walking through that, knowing what you know now? Do you think you would have changed anything going like leading up to that? Um, as far as your entire experience, would it like if you'd have known how things happened, would you have changed? Um, Not necessarily what you did, but like changed how you like would you have wanted to know what the outcome was um beforehand?
What I would have wanted to know what the outcome was beforehand. Um, I I don't know. I guess not. There was always a sense of hope throughout the entire 10-month experience. Every single ultrasound that we got to go through, there was a lot of excitement.
Mhm.
Those are the only
Mhm.
moments that I had with
Mhm.
Emery
Mm.
Mhm.
was every single ultrasound, every time I heard her heartbeat, feeling her inside the womb. And as we were trying to come up with what her name was and asking her as she was in the womb, like, hey, is this your name? She didn't kick. Is this your name? Then finally, is Emery your name? And she kicked, like, oh, wow, your name is Emery. I don't know. Those are the only moments that I had with Emery. And then, the
Mhm.
whole 3 days that she was in NICU, there's just all kinds of hope. I know what God is capable of doing.
Mhm.
And we knew that he could pull her out of it if that was his will. So I don't know. If we knew the outcome, then there would have, I don't know, we wouldn't have had that. There's always still
Mhm.
the obvious hope of we're going to spend an eternity with her,
Mm.
regardless of the outcome.
Yeah.
So that's the hope that we cling to now.
Mhm.
So how did walking through that change your faith relationship as far as your like relationship to God? Was it just continual growth as far as just always just clinging and getting stronger, whereas there's battles back and forth? How would you describe that journey of that relationship?
I would say it gets more personal.
Mm-hmm.
There, I don't think I've ever been angry at God to that level before, and just open and honest with Him, and like being angry, and then realizing that everything that I have is a gift from God, and finally understanding Christ's sacrifice is enough, regardless
Mm,
of what situations, outcomes happen in my life. He still came down to this earth to die and save me from my sins. What can he possibly what can possibly be more hopeful than that? So,
mm,
but it's definitely more personal. Definitely have a more eternal perspective on everything.
mm,
I would agree. I think I was also very angry. Um,
mm,
and I was constantly asking why.
mm,
Um, constantly just like, I guess, lamenting and just like, I really had to unlearn a lot of bad thought, or not thought, sorry, like bad theology I had,
mm,
of what it meant to be a Christian. I think it really challenged me to really, like, do I really believe in this no matter what?
mm,
Um, and if I don't, what are my options? Basically nothing, like death, the dark world. There's nothing in the world for me. So, as angry as I was, I still kept believing in God and still kept going to Him. Um, like, I read a lot of good books. I read the Bible a lot more. Like, I would agree. I think it became a lot more real. Like, I really had to fight for my faith
mm,
because my doubts were big,
mm,
because I really had to come to peace with God is good even when
mm.
your baby dies.
Yeah.
That's probably been the hardest one, but he is good. But it's been hard. Like, even sitting here saying that, I probably couldn't have said that like even 3 years ago still.
Mm,
Just
yeah.
that So yeah, just that battle, constant battle, by the way. It was just constant. At the beginning, it was literally minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, and then it gets a little bit better. Um, Nowadays, maybe it's not as often that I'm fighting that why, or, you know, um, but yeah, definitely I would say it just became deeper, wasn't so
Mm,
shallow anymore.
yeah. So, what were some things that you like wished people would have done for you during that time? Like, what things would have actually been helpful? And I guess you could answer it from the opposite side too. Like, what things were either said or done that were completely not helpful, and maybe were counterintuitive to, like, actually instead of somebody actually being caring towards you, actually ended up being a lot more hurtful. And you can answer it both ways. Like, what would actually be helpful or was helpful, and then what wasn't at all.
I think early on, the things that were the worst for me were people trying to comfort me with biblical truths. I'm not saying they're not good, because they are, but like, like saying, well, she's in a better place and like she's with God. And it's like, yeah, I know that. But right now, that doesn't help me because I want her
Mm-hmm.
in my arms. Like, truth is good, but it definitely just, I don't know, it doesn't take away my pain. And I think people thought, oh, I'm going to tell her all these truths. It's going to take her pain away. No, actually, not really. If anything,
Yeah.
it like hit me on the wound, like they were like punching me on the wound, reminding me that my baby wasn't here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I would say that's probably the most like unhelpful, like people trying to comfort me. And it's like, I wish people would just realize like you can't really comfort me. Like your words are not going to take away how sad and heartbroken I am right now. Like I just need you to say, I'm sorry, this sucks, and just sit there and cry with me too. You know, like it literally is just that. Because
Yeah.
you really can't. What are you going to say? You know, you nothing. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah.
It's good. You know, we always had a deep amount of love for Emery, and it seemed like sometimes people were so afraid to even mention her or bring her up that's another thing. It could, you know, people don't want to bring her up a lot of times because they don't want to have to share in your pain. They don't want to have that burden on themselves. But I mean, whenever people did bring her up and did so in a loving way, somehow, I don't even know how they did it, but of just like, your daughter is Emery and she was here and we love her. So that, even if it is sad, we're already sad. So I don't know. We like talking about her.
Yeah.
Or just appreciated that.
Yeah, and I guess in that manner too, it's like having. I mean, she's part of your family, and it would be weird to not talk about that part of your family, even though it hurts or you're broken because of it. It's almost dishonoring to not talk about her at all, as if she didn't exist.
Right.
Which I think, as far as somebody who's not walked directly through losing a child that way, I think my, my hurdle that I need to get over, and same with a lot of other people who are actually just trying to be helpful, is to realize that like it's not a bad thing to cry with somebody else, and to be with them in that pain, but to pretend like they don't exist because you're worried about bringing up something that does have so much emotion to it actually ends up being more hurtful than allowing the emotion that's there anyway to actually exist.
Right. Yeah. Basically, it validates that they see that part of our lives, you know, and that they care enough to mention her, and that just means a lot. And yeah, and even as like, yeah, sure, like again at the beginning, like I was crying like almost every day, you know, for like a month, you know. But like now, like now that we have, you know, 2 living children, like we don't hear her name at all sometimes. And I like now it's like a breath of fresh air if someone remembers her, and it's like it brings a smile to my face actually. You know, so I don't know, like there's just yeah, like that's a huge thing because it's like, oh, you haven't forgotten about that huge part of my life that has changed us forever. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's beautiful because honestly, I think that that's one of the things that I know Abby and I have tried to do, but it definitely has been something that like we've tried to make sure that we do that and remember that Emery was here. She was a living, beautiful girl, and she's your child.
Yeah.
And it's hard sometimes. And I even think of people who have passed away later on in life. Even my grandfather. Like I still want to bring her or him up to my grandmother because she was married to him, and all of a sudden once he passes away, he'd be like, okay, let's pretend he didn't exist for the last 50, 60 years or however long we knew. Or for me, like 25 years of having known him, it would just seem weird to just try to erase a section of your life.
Right.
So even though this section of your life was in hours very short compared to everything else, was very, very monumental. The children change your life forever, for sure. So how how have you guys been able to process just the grief of losing a child on a day-by-day basis? Does it get easier as things go along? Does it get harder, or is it just some days are better than others?
Let me give your perspective first.
I don't know if easier is not the right word. I think you just get used to living with the pain. It's there, and it's just a part of who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, like for me, like I said, early on I read a lot of books on grief. I read other people's memoirs on losing children, losing loved ones. I joined support groups. We joined support groups, Grief Share, because it forced us to get out. I think it's really easy to become isolated in your grief, and that's also very unhealthy. So getting out there and talking to others who are also grieving in some way, whether it might not have been a baby, but still they're grieving, was really helpful to process, honestly. It made it more normal to be like, okay, yeah, like there's other people that are like sad every day like me, like, and it's normal and it's okay. And we are just continuing on. Yeah, and I would agree. I think it's a process of accepting that this is life and not fighting it. For a long time, I fought my grief. I hated being sad, but then I realized that my sadness is actually my love for my child. So I shouldn't hate it. I should accept it. And yeah, I would agree. It's not necessarily easier. It just changes over time. For me, I really like the visual of the waves in the ocean and grief. Like I felt, yes, at the beginning, it was constant crashing of waves on me of grief, but it becomes less and less. It becomes more like like a soft sea, and maybe an occasional wave crashes with certain triggers, certain memories. But I think for me, it has helped to look at it as this is my love for my child. This is how I parent her and remember her. And so it's part of me. It's my friend. That's kind of weird to say, but that's how I see it. I see it. That grief is like my friend, and we hold hands,
Yeah.
and we walk together. Sorry, that's kind of weird, but it's like a visual metaphor-ish type. That's how I view it.
Yeah.
But it's taken me a while, honestly. I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, that happened right away. No, because 6 months later we miscarried. So like our grief kind of doubled actually. And actually I sought therapy as well, by the way, because I was not doing so great. Anyways, sorry, that's a really long. The point is, yes, it is hard. And at times at the beginning you feel like dying, not like suicide, but just because it's just so heavy.
Yeah.
It's different, it's not like, oh, I'm going, like, it's different than suicide. It's just, you just feel like dying because it's just so heavy and you just feel like you can't go on. But anyways, with all those things I mentioned, I think slowly it began to feel less and less of a, like, just overwhelming burden. Yeah.
And during those times, would there be any, like, what would be the most helpful for somebody like just trying to be a friend that's walking alongside somebody like that, during those times where the grief feels like it is too heavy and too much of a burden to carry? Like, what actually is or was helpful during those times?
I think, sorry, I'm talking a lot, so jump in. I think the practical is always very helpful, like cooking meals.
Yeah.
Like I said, very beginning, like I'll be honest, I don't remember the first month. Like even to this day, it's like a blur. I don't even know how I made it. Like I'll be honest with you. So I must have eaten. So I'm just saying, like, No, I'm being real. Like that's just it's a
Yeah.
scary thought. I'm like, wow, I really don't remember anything from that first
Mm.
month. So I'm grateful for like our friends from church who like they made a
Mhm.
meal plan and they were bringing us meals like 3 times a week. Like that was super helpful because I mean neither one of us had the energy or care to cook or feed ourselves. Like let's just be real. Um
Mhm.
like my mom and grandma stayed with us for a while, like just like giving us I think what was helpful is just giving me space to be how I needed to be.
Mm.
In one moment, I could be laughing, and the next moment, I could be crying and not judging me, just letting me be, letting me feel all the emotions, um, not trying to fix me, trying to fix
Mm.
my problem, take my pain away. Yeah, I guess just entering into the uncomfortable space.
Yeah.
And I think I would say that's the most helpful. Just like I remember many times like sitting with Abby, we would just be talking and crying.
Mm.
And like but it was great because like she just let me talk about it and she wasn't like, "Okay, that's enough." Like and so I like moments like that were huge, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super good. So if you could say one thing or a couple of things to somebody who would be walking through losing a child, like currently in the moment, like they're just hit with that first week, or the first several moments,
Mhm.
what would be kind of what would you tell them, or what would be your advice to them?
Ooh. Hmm. I mean, I have met people since losing Emery, others who have lost babies as well. And honestly, the first thing I say is I'm sorry
Mm.
and it sucks and I'm sorry that this has happened to you. Um and then I tell them to not be afraid to cry
Mm.
and not be afraid to talk about their child because they existed and mattered.
Yeah.
And to not let anyone make them feel bad for the emotions they're feeling.
Mm.
Um, that's my advice, like that I try to share with people because I think if we can just normalize like grief, like and mourning that you have to mourn, and it's gonna take time that maybe we'll be better off. You know what I mean? Like maybe we'll
Yeah.
be healthier in the long run and not so like mentally messed up these days, like a lot of us are. I don't
Yeah.
know. So that's what I try to tell people. And I just try to, be there for them. And honestly, I don't say much more than that.
Mm.
And I encourage them to find a support group of other lost parents,
Yeah.
um, so that they don't feel alone because it will feel alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, there were a lot of people who like asked us how we were doing and if there was like issues with just with us and our marriage. And
Yeah.
Mm.
I know that couples they would grieve differently, and but I feel like we gave each other grace and we were
Mhm.
understanding of each other and allowed each other to grieve differently.
Mhm.
Mm.
So I guess one piece of advice would be like, there's nobody that loves your child more than your spouse.
Mm.
Uh, like, so I don't know, like just give, if there's anybody that you're going to give some grace to, let it be your spouse and
Mm.
understanding that they're going to grieve differently than you.
Mhm.
And, I don't know. I couldn't imagine trying to go through all of this alone without Jen. That just, is inconceivable. Like, there's
Yeah.
nobody that loves Marie as much as me than Jen.
Mhm.
Mm.
So stick to your spouse. Go through it
Yeah.
together.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I appreciate you guys so much for taking the time to be able to share your story and talk about Emory with us. I know, again, this is something that like I'm super passionate about trying to open up the conversation more. Not because I mean, it's basically because what you said. I'm not looking to rip people's wounds open. I'm looking forward to trying to actually help people heal and learn that we're all broken and we're all dealing with different things at different times. And instead of trying to cover them over and pretend like they don't exist, it'd be better if we all realize that we have different things that we're going through, whether it's grief, sorrow, pain, hurt. And it's much better if we realize it and can open up to each other and learn to cry together. I think the church has done a phenomenal job of learning how to celebrate together.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we've swung the pendulum so far to one side of celebration that we've lost how to actually just grieve with each other.
Yeah.
I love what you said, Jen, about, because honestly, your advice to the parents who've just lost, I think, was the same advice that you give to people who haven't lost any in what they should say, which is essentially, I'm really sorry this happened to you. This sucks. And learn to cry. Like, learn to cry with them. Because there aren't magic words that make everything disappear and go away. And it's not like you can turn back time and change how things go. Life sometimes just sucks.
Yep.
And it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So, but thank you guys so much. For anybody who's watching this, if you need a support group or somebody to walk with you through it, I'm going to try to put some links listed below where you can find some help to where there can truly be other people that can walk through this time with you. If you're not involved in a local church, do everything that you can to try to get plugged in with people who truly do care and love you and love your family and love God above all else. I know that for Jenn and Brandon, that was a huge help for them walking through grief and being able to know that God is good, but actually walking through what that looks like in life, even when life is not easy. So again, Jenn, Brandon, thank you so much for being willing to share your story and talk with us.
Anytime. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you guys. And hopefully, we'll continue to keep talking and living life together. I'm super pumped for it. And, hopefully this has been an encouragement for other people as well, too, to understand that they're not alone and that there is hope.
Yep. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.